Without further ado, today's forum will be given by Kyla Whannell, Interim Director of Enrollment Management. The title of the talk is Admissions 101 with a longer subtitle on the screen now. Take it away, Kyla.
All right, can you hear me? Awesome. Well, thank you all for taking time out of your day to come on out and listen about admissions, the process, as well as, how we can all work together in recruitment, because it takes all of us, as we've all seen in how all of you have really supported the admissions office over the years. So I'm excited to kind of dive in deep and get a little technical in there as well with you today. So the admissions process, I don't know if many of you have heard of the admissions funnel, but in admissions, we like to really consider each step of the process a different step throughout the funnel. And every student, depending where they are in their college search process, are a part of that funnel. The top of the funnel is the prospects, which will go into what does that mean. And then you get into your inquiry stage with students that have inquired about your university or have an interest. Then they turn into an applicant. Then they turn into an admitted student. And then they turn into a deposited student if they'd like to commit to Alfred. And then ultimately, if they make it here on move-in day and to the first day of classes, they are an enrolled student. And so our job in admissions is to get those students from that top of the funnel all the way to the bottom of the funnel, to get them here on campus and find that right fit for them. So talking about prospects, what are those? What do prospects mean? Where do we get them from? And prospects for us at Alfred are students that are in the awareness stage. The students that, are just starting to research colleges. They might be a freshman in high school. They might be a sophomore, a junior, or a senior. Maybe they haven't even thought about the college search yet. And so those prospects are really trying to figure out what it is that they want to do. What type of things in a college are they looking for? And what's going to be a good fit for them before they start visiting, before they start applying to colleges. These students, we end up buying names. We look at a variety of different metrics. We look at the data. We're taking a look and seeing, okay, where are students coming from in our regular class years, from last year and, 5 years ago to, 2 years ago. And we're seeing where it makes sense to get names from. Prospects are also, they can be a little stealthy too. They're just out there. We might not have any information on them. Or the prospects might be, somebody recommends a student to learn more about our university, whether that's a school counselor or their parent, and putting their information in to start receiving updates about Alfred, to learn about us through email campaigns, mailings that we do. I know mailing can kind of sound a little old school, but it works. But people look at their mail. And so we do some mailing as well. And as soon as a student gets into our system, as a prospect, they're assigned an admissions counselor based on where they live. So they immediately are connected with someone from Alfred that's going to be there to guide them through their process, to help give them advice, to help them figure out, okay, does Alfred actually have any of the programs I'm looking for? If they don't, maybe this isn't the right fit. Or maybe they just, want to know, do we have sports too? Can I be an academic scholar and an athlete too? Those are those questions that are happening. And so getting them in touch with our staff members who, many of them actually graduated from Alfred, or have been an admissions ambassador before, those individuals are going to be working with them. And then as soon as a student decides, okay, I love what I heard. I think Alfred could be an area I'd want to apply to, or I just want to learn some more in-depth information. They raise their hand. That's what we call a hand raiser in the admissions office. That student will have either engaged with us in a variety of ways, whether that is attending a high school visit when we go and visit their high school to present. That might be meeting us at a college fair, a national college fair down in Baltimore, let's say. It might be they filled out a form online. There's plenty of request more info forms linked throughout the website. They might have clicked one of those. They might have started an application. Those types of things mark them as an inquiry, a hand raiser. They might have clicked on all the links in every single email we have ever sent them. That means they're engaged, they're interested with Alfred. And then they also will be receiving email and mail from Alfred that's a little bit different than what a prospect would get because they actually are aware of us. And we don't need to introduce them to, the three core, pillars of Alfred the same way as we've already done for them as a prospect. We're going to dive in deeper with that with the students. So if a student is seeing that and, they've decided, okay, I've inquired, I still like what I'm seeing, I'm really interested in Alfred, they'll apply. And they would then be considered an applicant in the funnel. And so as we're getting into the applicant stage, this is where it gets to start to be more competitive. This is where we're really focused on getting students to actually complete that application. This is where students start really figuring out, okay, what are my top 5 choices? What are my top 10 choices? And on average, we see students are applying to about 5 to 10 colleges on average. Students, they have options out there, whether that's an in-state school within New York State, whether that's an out-of-state school, maybe they want to go across the country to California. I'm from Alaska and I came to college in New York. You have students that want to do that. And then you also have the students that are like, no, I really want to stay local, but I have some safety net schools too. So students are really just applying to a variety to really see what their opportunities are going to be. Something we always tell our students is apply to different schools, small schools, medium schools, large schools, visit small, medium, large, really figure out what's going to be the best fit for you because not every school is the right fit for a student, and that's okay. Every school has those strengths. Every school has those different things that students, as they're looking, they're like, I buy into that. And so for us, those 3 core pillars, mentorship, intersections, inclusivity, when students commit to Alfred, they're committing to those. They want those things a part of their education and a part of their experience of college. And so students who are applying, they'll submit an application through our AU admissions website. They'll submit an application on the Common App as well. And then also they start to receive updates. So maybe they forget to submit a transcript with us. You don't have to submit all your materials at once to apply to college. You can just submit the application that talks to us about your activities that you're a part of, the clubs, any volunteer work that you're doing, your essay. You can submit all that and then follow up with your transcript and things of that nature. So in our office, we do a lot of follow up with those students. We reach out to their school counselors. Their parents get a nudge too if we have that information to say, hey, your student's starting an application. They haven't finished it yet. Let's get that done. And a lot of times those parents will nudge the student to, complete the process. And so from there, those students also are reviewed. And so if a student applies and we right away can see they don't qualify for that program that they're applying for, we have a conversation with them. We want to figure out what is it that they actually want to go into. What areas, maybe they don't have the necessary courses for one of our programs, but maybe they do for another one. What is their end goal? What are their career paths? What is their dream career that they want? And how can we help advise and guide them and show them the different opportunities here at Alfred? So that's a time where we start to do this as well. And then if a student is then admitted to Alfred, a student can be denied, a student can be admitted. Why is a student admitted to Alfred University? You'll hear all these numbers and different things throughout the year when we, do campus conversations. This is how many students we've admitted. But what goes into that thought process? We take a look at the whole application. We are very holistic in our review. We take a look at what are they involved in? Are they giving back to their community? What activities are there? Are there intersections? Can we find those already in their application? Their letter of recommendation, is it a good letter of recommendation? Is that individual talking about the student in a way where that student's going to contribute to our campus community? Maybe a student didn't do well in a course. The letter of recommenders that we're really looking for and what we're looking for in that recommendation are, did the student have grit? Did they ask for help? Those types of things to help us learn a little bit more about who that individual is, because you can only learn so much through a high school transcript or through their community college courses that they've taken. It's just a grade, but what is it about the person? So those letter of recommendations are really important for us. But we also take a look, obviously, at the college prep courses. Do they have what it takes? Do they have the courses necessary to be successful? Or are they just taking half days all the time, and they don't have a full class schedule? Are they challenging themselves? Are they trying to take an AP course? Have they taken an IB course, an honors course? Have they really taken advantage of courses in their school that are related to their major? Or are they trying things out? That's okay still. But have they challenged themselves? That's something that we look for. And then we also will take into consideration Regent scores. We take into consideration SAT and ACT scores if a student submits those to us. And all of that decides what merit-based scholarship a student might receive, and also decides if that student's going to be admitted to Alfred. So there's a lot of thought that happens. We read every single letter of recommendation that comes through an application, every single one. Every application is read, and then we come together and we really focus on, building that class and taking a look at the quality and what we're looking for. And so that is just kind of a high level overview of what we're looking for in an applicant, but that's kind of our thought process. And then if a student's admitted, at that point in time, a student can actually submit their FAFSA to us. We get those FAFSAs. And that's how we can decide, okay, what federal aid, what financial aid award letter can we provide a student? And so students will submit, if they're accepted to 5, 10 colleges, whoever it is, they'll start to submit their FAFSAs to those schools. And then your financial aid office here at Alfred can create that offer letter for them. If a student says, I love Alfred, it's affordable, or maybe it's a reach, maybe it's not necessarily 100% affordable, but that's okay, I'm willing to take out a loan, they'll deposit, they'll commit to Alfred. And they commit by depositing, and they submit a $300 deposit. That deposit saves their seat in the incoming class. And students have until May 1st of their senior year, or for our transfer students, May 1st of their sophomore year at a community college or another college. If we need to extend that deadline, we do so on a case-by-case basis for students. If maybe a student committed somewhere, this happens all the time, and then they went to orientation at that school, and then they're like, ooh, Alfred was the right choice. I made a bad decision. And they come back to us and they say, I really want to come to Alfred. We'll have that conversation with them. So on a case-by-case basis, students can submit their deposit after May 1st. And this deposit allows them to do all the necessary things to be ready to attend classes in the fall. They submit their housing forms now, they can get registered for classes, they can fill out their health forms. So that deposit is a key thing for them to do if they are set on coming to Alfred. So if we see something on social media where a student will say, oh, I committed to Alfred, or in a chat that we have, and they haven't actually deposited yet, we follow up with them right away. Because obviously there's that interest. They just need to make it official. And then after deposit, this is kind of in between the next part of the funnel. It's called melt season. Has anyone heard the term melt season before? Yes, a little bit. Yes, my admissions counselors in the back know what melt season is. Melt season, it happens after May 1st. May 1st, till that student steps onto campus. That is considered melt season. So you've got a couple month period where a student is committed to you, but they can change their mind. And so our job during melt season is, how are we engaging those students? How are we getting them excited to come to Alfred? How are we getting them access to the different resources on campus, developing those relationships with housing, with their roommate that they've been assigned to? How are we continuing to get them excited about graduating? It's a big accomplishment, and we're there to celebrate them throughout that whole entire summer. But we're also there to really make sure they're getting things done. Because a key indicator if a student is going to melt, if they're not taking care of the necessary things like filling out a housing form, filling out their pre-registration surveys to get registered for classes, if they're not responding to our text messages, or their parents aren't involved, or they're not asking questions about their bill. Those types of things are indicators. And so we measure that. We take a look at the data. We take a look at what are students doing and what are they not doing, so we can really know ahead of time if a student is going to melt. So we don't get till move-in day and a student just doesn't show up, and we don't know why. So we really try and track that in our office. And then if we've had a great melt season and we haven't had too many melts, that student makes it and they become an enrolled student. They're here, they're in classes, they're in your labs. Maybe they bring a latte, like Andy said, to their first week of lab. But they're here, you know, they've made it, they've committed to Alfred, they've moved in, they've done the process, and they've made it. And that is our goal. And that's when that handshake happens, from admissions, enrollment management, to our student experience side, to our faculty, and our other staff here on campus. That's when that handshake happens. And for the first couple of weeks, families still reach out to us. We get, you know, frantic phone calls at 8 p.m. at night, you know, from a mom who's like, hey, can someone go check on my daughter? Like, we are still there helping those students, but we're handshaking. You know, we're making sure those students are knowing who and where to go throughout their first couple of weeks here on campus. So the funnel, the students kind of make it through. Any questions about the funnel, the admissions funnel? No, okay. So we're going to talk about the application requirements to Alfred. I will note, every single school is different in what they require. It is not going to be the same for students. And so for a lot of students, that can be confusing. There's a lot of different deadlines for students to meet. Every college is a little different. Some schools have early action, some schools have early decision. And so you want to remove the barriers for students. And so being as clear as possible is important for us at Alfred. We only offer early action here at Alfred. We do not offer early decision at this time. Our early action deadline is December 1st. Some schools, it's November 15th. You know, some other schools, it is the same as December 1st. So our advice to students and parents is to write that all down, keep track of that, because you don't want a student to miss out on their top choices just because they missed a deadline. It is free. That is something for our undergraduate student. It is a free application. They do not have to submit anything for that. Some schools do charge a $50 fee, but that can really add up for students. Students can apply on our website. It's a quick and easy application. They can apply there if they know Alfred is the only school I want to go to. A lot of students will apply just right there. Or maybe they just think it's easier than the Common App. The Common App is something that students all across the country and world have access to. And that allows students to apply to 10 colleges at a time. So it's a large application. It asks you any question you can think of. And then those are sent to those 10 schools, 5 schools, you know, 6 that the student has decided, hey, I've clicked them, I want them to receive my application. And so we learn more about those students too through that. But also, you know, okay, I'm one of a couple, actually. When a student submits that AU application, sometimes we know, okay, that student's really interested in Alfred because it was very direct to us. We are test optional. Students can submit SAT, ACT scores if they'd like, but they don't have to. And those sometimes come in on their transcripts already, but it costs money for students to send us their scores. And that's another barrier. Not every student has a lot of money to be able to put into that application process. And so we are test optional, but if a student really wants us to see that score and maybe it's not going to, they say, hey, I can't afford to, you know, send you those scores. A lot of times it's on the transcript. So we can take a look if they really want us to see that. One letter of recommendation. That's all we require. Some students will submit 2, sometimes 3, sometimes 4. But like I said, we read all of our letter of recommendations. So we will read them all, but we advise students at least 1. 2 is kind of that happy medium right there if they really want more of their, you know, teachers or their school counselor or their coach even to write them a letter of rec. But it has to come from somebody that knows them academically. So a core teacher, a school counselor. So what we advise students is if they're interested in biology, you know, have your biology, you know, teacher do that. If you're interested in engineering and you're taking a project lead the way course, you know, or a physics course, have that person do it. If you're, you know, an art and design major, have your art and design teacher write that letter of recommendation for you. So someone that can speak to your academic abilities, or your school counselor, if they've really helped guide you throughout your process. We require an official high school transcript. So if anyone ever asks you, how do I send a transcript in? Their school counselor has to send that in to us. The students can't send their transcript on over to us because it has to be official. It has to have that seal. We have to know it comes from the adult. And so that comes directly from those schools. And then also a portfolio is required, or an audition in some cases for performing arts. And so those are additional things that students have to do, but we walk them through each step of the process. We inform them up front what they need to do. So it is communicated very clearly to our students. Sure. So They are applying, they're inquiring, they're asking about Alfred, they're interested. And at every single stage of that admissions funnel, we are recruiting those students. So what does recruitment look like throughout all of the different funnel stages? What does that look like? This is high level. You could get even more granular under each of these bullets on what we're doing within the admissions office, but I thought I'd kind of focus more on kind of the, higher level view. We travel. We travel across the country. We travel locally. We're in high schools. We're doing presentations. We're going to college fairs. Some days might start at 5 a.m. for one of our admissions counselors to go drive to something. They might not get home till 9 p.m. that night or to their hotel. Many of them are traveling for weeks on end. They get home for the weekend, or they have travel on the weekends, during travel season. And our travel season starts now. We have people already out on the road. It ends around a little bit before the, November break here on campus. And then we do it again in the spring as well, starting in March through May. So our travel season has two kind of areas to it. If you have somebody at a high school that that's looking at colleges, tell them to come stop in and see us when we're in their high school locally. We love to talk to students. We want to chat about Alfred, and we want to just help guide them because it's a stressful process for many students. We also go to school counselor conferences, art teacher conferences, engineering teacher conferences, whatever it might be. There's all these different conferences where we're able to get in front of people. And so we try and find those. We try and get invited to those so we can really recruit for Alfred. We do a lot of student and family outreach. We do email campaigns to students based on where they are in the cycle. We have targeted messaging based on programs they're interested in, clubs, activities, whatever it might be. We really target the student to make sure they're learning about what they're interested in, but then they're also exposed to other things that we really want them to know about and we think they'd also like. Because we want them to not feel like they're put in a box and they have to do one thing when they get here. We want them to know all offerings, but we also want to cater towards what they're looking for. Parents are getting way more involved nowadays in the college search. I don't know if some of you, have family that are going through the admissions process right now, or you yourself have been through it. But a lot of parents are more invested in that. And that's understandable. Cost is a big factor, finding the right fit. Students want to fit in, and those parents are becoming more and more influencers throughout that process. So we also do a lot of family outreach. We have a parent portal we're launching for prospective families this year. That's really going to help guide them and help them figure out, okay, is my student missing their high school transcript still? And I've asked them 5 times to go down to the guidance office and go request that get sent to Alfred. So they'll be kept in, up to date. They'll know when events are going on. So we always include that parent in that process or that guardian. Handwritten notes. It might take a little while. The counselors will probably, at certain times say, why is Kyla making me write 200 handwritten notes right now? My hand's going to fall off. But those handwritten notes, they matter. We send those to accepted students. We send those to targeted students going throughout the process based on the data, based on where we are. So they have that interaction with us in a different way. Not all schools do handwritten notes. And so how can we stand out? It's President Zupan, he does some virtual videos for students as well, which are very personal to them. So how can we personalize this process, and how can Alfred stand out when they're looking at 10 other colleges? Because it can be hard. Virtual meetings. We offer virtual opportunities. We have students from all over the country, all over the world here at Alfred. You heard at the opening breakfast, we have 29 countries represented and 33 states represented here on campus. Not every student can get to campus right away. So virtual sessions to inform them about the application process, virtual sessions where they can meet leadership, where they can meet other students that are here. We plan those types of events for them. And then showing students around campus. Getting students to campus is a key thing for us here at Alfred. We want them to see our faculty in action. We want them to see the spaces. We want them to meet the students here, because when they do, they yield at a higher rate. And yield means they commit. So they go from one step to the next. We get them through their process. We yield them at the end. And so for that, we really focus in on getting them for individual visits, getting them to our open houses, but we show them around. We do custom visits based on what they want to do. They might want a class sit-in. So you might get an outreach from our office saying, hey, we have a student that wants to sit in on a class. Can they do that? Because our students really want to understand, what is it going to be like to be a student there? And then guiding them through their college process. We are just there to support them when whatever area they need. Maybe they're like, I don't know if college is the right path for me. Okay, why? Let's talk about it. Maybe they just have general college questions. How can we advise and help them through the process so that they understand it's not as stressful as sometimes we make it to be? How can we help support them? Can we get them in touch with people if they're like, I don't know if I should email that person first, or hey, I'm thinking of this program and now Alfred doesn't have it. So I'm not going to be looking at Alfred. How can we talk with them? How can we help guide them? We're really focused on that relationship building aspect with our students and our families because we want them to understand that we're there to help them and we want to earn their trust. And if they trust you, they trust what you're saying, they understand, and they're more likely to come to you. And everyone in our office, we are invested in those students, and all we want is the best for those students. That's what we're doing, is helping them through that process. It's a big decision. And the fact that we get to be a part of it is just amazing. That's why I am in admissions. It's a privilege to be a part of that process and to be able to help a student make such an amazing decision for themselves that's going to impact them in 4 years, in 10 years, and in 20 years. And then walking them through their financial aid. That's a part of recruitment. It might not seem like that's recruitment, but it is. Educating those families on the costs so they understand what they're paying. Educating those families and looking at other financial aid award letters. Sometimes people think that maybe if they get a larger scholarship elsewhere, that means it's going to be, more affordable. And that's not always the case. And so that's recruitment for us, is talking to them and saying, hey, actually, if you look at the, cost, Alfred's more affordable for you, and walking them through that. And that is a part of the recruitment process. Working with those school counselors and those independent education consultants, those individuals in the schools helping those students and that have known them for years, they're an important part. And so we really need to recognize those individuals. We need to develop those relationships as we're going. For us, something we were doing this year for School Counselor Appreciation Week was recognizing them. A lot of times they're not recognized. And so how can Alfred connect with them? How can we thank them for what they're doing? Because it's not an easy job. The school counselors are doing a lot for their students. Crisis management, getting them registered for classes, helping them figure out what they want to do. They're doing it all. And a lot of times there's only a couple school counselors for each high school. And so they have large caseloads. Independent education consultants as well. Those are individuals that students and families, they pay for a service for them to help find the best fit for their student, to help them weed it out and come to them. They trust them. And so how we can work and connect more with them. And then marketing, that's a part of recruitment. And that's a key thing for us that helps support what we're doing. Because we can, travel anywhere. But if we don't have the marketing materials, if we don't have the marketing support, the word's not getting out there. So that's a part of the recruitment process as well. So when are students on campus? A big part of visits, a big part of recruitment is visits. So we do daily visitors every single day, Monday through Friday. We have opportunities for students to come and visit campus. They are here at 10 a.m. and 12:30 every single day. Sometimes you might have one person signed up. Sometimes you might have 10 people signed up for a session. It depends. But then when they come to campus, they'll get an information session, they'll get a tour, they might have an individual one-on-one meeting with their admissions counselor, depending on where they are in the funnel. The needs are different for each student, and we look at that as they plan their visit to campus. They might go in, meet with a coach. They might go meet with a faculty member. They might request to meet with President Zupan. They might request to meet with somebody here on campus. And so we help coordinate that for them. So it's a customized visit so they can get everything they want out of that visit. We offer weekend visits throughout the fall and throughout the, spring. Sometimes students can't, take time off of school. Sometimes parents can't take time off of work. And so we offer these weekend visits as well for them to come check out campus. They have their student tour guides, our admissions staff are there, and they're able to get that same experience. And then we have open house and accepted students days. Those are very programmatic. Those are long days. A student might get here at 9 a.m. that day and they leave at 3 or 4. Those days are jam-packed to let them learn about our different offerings within the academic affairs area. They might want to learn more about club offerings. So, there's different parts of the day where they can really understand what is Alfred University about and what is it going to be like for me as a student. And at the end of the day, as you think, and that question that was posed to me is, how can we all help with recruitment? The one thing to think about is we all contribute to the success of recruitment. No matter if you're an admissions counselor, no matter if you just, walk by a student, we all contribute to the success because it takes all of us. And so something I wanted to just touch base about, and is something, how can we all help? There's a variety of different ways. You don't need to travel. You don't need to, meet with every single student in your area to help with recruitment. That's not what we need. Sometimes it's the small things that help with recruitment and that actually mean the most. If you see a tour and they're in your space, stop them, talk to them. Students want to hear about what students are doing in the classroom. As a faculty member, have you done research? Can you talk to them about that? Get to know them, ask them their name. Asking them their name is a big thing. Using their name in that conversation is another big thing too. But, just stopping and chatting with them. We talk about how great our community is, but when we can show it to them when they visit campus, it means that much more. If you're in a hurry trying to get to somewhere on campus, a meeting, a class, whatever it might be, just smile. You don't even need to stop and have a conversation. Just smile to them. Because most of the time after you smile at a tour, an admissions ambassador, an admissions counselor, someone's going to say, oh, that's what our faculty are like. That's what our staff are like. That's the community you're going to be joining. And so that smile can go a long way. Asking someone if they need directions, I will say, we try and provide as much direction as possible to get to the admissions building, but sometimes students might park all the way across campus in a different parking lot. They might be wandering, they might not be sure where to go. Ask them if you see someone confused, ask them if they need directions. That helpfulness, that guidance from our community, really, those are the little things we find on our admissions surveys after a student visit is people were so friendly. Someone helped me find where I needed to go. Someone talked to me while I was in line at Starbucks before my visit, and I learned this. It's those little things and those interactions that matter to those students and families. Another one, wearing Alfred gear, AU gear, the correct Alfred gear on campus. It's those little things. It's that branding, it's that marketing, but seeing the Alfred message all the time when they're here on campus. That's why I love Alfred Fridays, when you see everyone in their AU gear. So those types of things, those matter. And students see that. They get a t-shirt, when they leave our office as well for visiting campus. But it really does impact and it really helps with the branding here on campus. And then handwritten notes to students that are accepted. If you're like, hey, I really want to get more involved in recruitment. If maybe you're saying, I want to do something other than just talking to students when they get to campus. If you want to write a handwritten note to students that are accepted, come see me, email me. I'm happy to work with you on what that might look like for you. If maybe you just want to set aside 15 minutes one semester to do some handwritten notes, I can find a student that might really impact. They might really appreciate a note from somebody in that area. You don't have to, but it's open if you'd like to. And if you know someone that is going through the college process, if you know someone that's interested in Alfred, let us know. Send us their information, have them fill out an inquiry form because, sometimes a student might not be on our radar. Maybe we didn't buy their name. Maybe they haven't inquired before, even if we visited their high school. Maybe they didn't come down and talk to us, so we don't have their information. So if you can provide that to us, we'll get them on there. And we'll make sure they're getting communications from Alfred and they're assigned an admissions counselor right away. And another thing, as you're talking with families at visits, as you're seeing them on campus, what are students' concerns about? What are their questions surrounding? What are ways that maybe in conversation you can help address these concerns that they have as you see them on campus? Can I afford it? That's a big one. Will I fit in? Will I find, my group, my people here? Will I feel surrounded and safe and supported? Those are the types of things our students are looking for. They want to find a community that is going to help them and help them thrive. Will I be successful? I'm going to spend all this time, 4 years. Maybe I want to go on for graduate school. Am I going to be successful? Am I going to be guided in the right direction? Is somebody going to be there to help me? Those types of things, those are the questions that families and parents are always asking us in the admissions office. And then lastly, if you know anyone that's starting the college search in your family, maybe, family, friends, whoever it might be, if you just have questions about the college search process, we are a resource for you right here. We can talk to you about early action deadlines, early decision deadlines at other schools. We can talk to you about, different programs that might fit what your student is looking for. We can point you in the right direction. So you're not doing it alone. We're here and we're a resource. So use us. Come to the Alumni Hall offices. We'll get you connected with an admissions counselor or myself, and we're happy to talk with you. And then if you're interested in tuition remission, reach out to HR. If you work here at Alfred, if you are interested in tuition exchange, you need to talk to financial aid, those types of things that many people might have questions about. We're here to help you. And if you're not quite sure where to go and you forget after this presentation and you still want to inquire, let me know and I can point you in the right direction. That is our job. That is why we do what we do, is we want to help people. And we really want to help make it an easy process, whether you're a faculty and staff member here at Alfred or whether you're a prospective family. So thank you all for listening to me. Any questions at all? I'd be happy to answer them.
While Gary on Zoom land unmutes, I have a comment more than question.
Yeah.
In that a lot of times there are tours that are either walking by and walk right by us, either in the hallway or on the sidewalks, what have you. I would ask or encourage you to encourage the tour guides to also initiate with us.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we don't want, at least I know for me, if they're in the middle of talking,
Yeah.
I'm not going to interrupt them when they're in the middle of something. But if they interrupt themselves and greet me or say, hey, this is one of the professors, I'm going to jump in and talk.
Yeah.
And so I would encourage them to also initiate when they see us.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, and we can definitely let our student ambassadors know. Sometimes you might see an ambassador in a tour and they look like they're on a mission. Sometimes it's because they have a limited amount of time that they can be on tour, and they're doing it between classes, and sometimes there are groups that have to leave at a certain time. So sometimes they can't, but we could definitely encourage, if they're not on a crunch time, if they can take that extra time to interact, we'll definitely encourage them to do that more often. That's a great point.
Gary's unmuted, so go for it, Gary.
I have two questions, which are somewhat unrelated. The first has to do with the issue of marketing. My son was an administrator in the Achievement First charter school system in New York. This goes back about 3 years, but I think it's equally relevant today. At that time, the Achievement First, about 90% of their high school seniors were going off to college. Alfred State College got about 8 of those students. 0 came to Alfred University. And so my question then is, on what basis are you selecting? Are you going to certain schools and not other schools? In other words, you can't go to every single high school in New York State, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and so forth. But by the same token, if you're not there, you're not going to get students from that school. So how does that work?
Yeah, that's a great point. We really utilize the data in our office. We have our CRM system that we're taking a look. We evaluate every single year on what we're doing. If we're visiting schools, are we getting students to come down and talk with us? Are we allowed to give a presentation? What do those visits look like? How can we engage with those students? And in some schools, we might visit them for 3-4 years, and just no students come down and talk to us. No counselors are engaging with us. They don't seem to have that interest for us. And so there might be a year where we don't go visit that school. And maybe we try again the next year. So we take a look at where it's been successful. We take a look at, okay, are we getting more interest from certain areas? We need to spend a little bit more time there. Or maybe there's areas that we say, hey, we want more students from. So we're going to try and visit, let's say in this county, there's 10. We need to visit all 10 schools in this county, whatever it might be. But we take a look at that data to inform our choices based on where that interest is coming from, but also where we want to grow as well, even if there might not be interest. So I hope that answers your question. We're very data informed, and that helps us. And some schools we can't get into, that's a challenge. And so sometimes we have to really work on developing relationships. And sometimes schools tell us, hey, we don't have any students interested in Alfred, so I don't think it's worth it for you to come this year. We try and push back against that, but sometimes some schools are like, hey, maybe next year. Why don't you come next year? So then the counselors focus on developing that relationship that year. They focus on getting in front of those students at other areas. They focus on outreach from name buys we've done. So then next year, it's going to be a beneficial visit. They're going to have students and they're going to want us to come there. So I hope that helps answer your question, but a lot of thought goes into that.
Well, it partly answers the question, but if you say you're going to go back to those schools where we've had success in the past, but if you haven't recruited in a school, you're not going to have any success there. And therefore it becomes, I think, sort of a permanent situation. But my other question has to do with the way in which, the issue of selectivity. There are colleges that boast that, like Emory University, they select only 7% of their applicants for acceptance. At Alfred University, we're not quite that selective. But my question then is, if a student, a high school student, applies to Alfred, but then decides not to follow through with the application, in other words, does not submit a transcript, does not submit recommendations or whatever, is that student counted as an applicant as we try to account for the degree of selectivity that we do have here?
That's a great question. There's a lot of stages and a lot of different data points and data sets based on, and each school is different on what they use to help figure out what their acceptance rate might be. And so at Alfred, in the past, we have included those students that, are completed applications, we call them. They're the students that have submitted everything and they might have been admitted or denied. We include the students that have started the application but haven't. So that is what we consider all applications. So you have an all applications and then you have complete application numbers. So we have all these different data sets we can take a look at. And so for us, our acceptance rate has been measured on the overall applications to Alfred University. So that's what we've taken a look at. And many schools do it that way. And some schools do it just based on their completed app rate as well too. So it just kind of depends on each school, and everyone's a little bit different.
And what is that acceptance rate at Alfred University right now?
Yes. Yep. So with complete apps, if we're taking a look at the complete applications, and then our admit rate, we were around a 49% this year.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Since I don't see a hand, I'll of it to Andy and then to Michelle Tichy online.
One of my questions was just answered, which was our acceptance rate now, but how many of those students who are accepted actually visit on campus? Any idea what that percentage is? And then one other question is perhaps more tailored to our competitor across the street, which has associate's programs as well. But do you find out the information in terms of how many of their incoming class of say 1,500 are pursuing 4-year degrees versus 2-year degrees?
From over at A State,
for example.
Yeah, we're not privy necessarily to that information.
Yep.
With the SUNY system, due to our affiliation with the New York State College of Ceramics, we do see some data, but not all data from over there. So sometimes we might be able to see some of that, but not the full picture. But we chat with our counterparts over there to, see how's your year going, that type of thing. So we're aware, but not necessarily the number of 4 years. I don't have that off the top of my head. And then for visitors, on how many students visit that have been accepted, we have around, I think it was about a little over 1,400 visitors this past year to campus. And those students were accepted, but also students that might not have been accepted and might have just been, they might have visited at the inquiry stage or they were a prospect and they got an email to come visit and they decided to. So sometimes it happens once they're admitted and sometimes it's prior to their admittance to Alfred.
Michelle on the Zoom machine.
All right. So this may be a bit more philosophical at this point, but as mother and stepmother to kids in their early 20s, I want to know if we are doing anything to recruit the cohort of kids who stalled out going from high school to higher education because of the pandemic. I am personally aware, as well as professionally aware as developmental psychologists, that we have a huge population of kids who graduated from high school between 2019 and 2022 who just didn't do anything because of the state of the world and are now ready to go to college, but they're not non-traditional students. These are kids who paused out their development as learners because the world shut down. And I am passionately advocating for admissions offices, especially our admissions office, to look at them and start trying to find ways to recruit them. I personally recruited one of these students because my stepdaughter is a first year here at Alfred and she's 22 years old and she's not a non-traditional student. I made sure she is in FYE and all the bells and whistles because she has no business being put with people in their later 20s who already did some education. But I really think that's an opportunity for us if we could find ways to reach out and start recruiting some of these kids who are really ready for college now.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, and I agree wholeheartedly. There is a group of students that they kind of it stalled, they paused, they weren't quite sure what to do. Now, are we recruiting them? I think overall, yes, but I think we don't know all those students. It's not necessarily easy to get all those students' names or get their contact information or those types of things where we could use that to reach out to them and help guide them. So sometimes that's a little bit difficult, is getting that information. And where can we find that? We utilize Clearinghouse as well for data, things of that nature. Students, that started elsewhere and then maybe they're no longer, at another school. We do outreach to those students. So there is outreach happening, but sometimes it's hard to find the information that you're talking about, or those students that graduated 2-3 years ago, and maybe they haven't raised their hand, maybe their name isn't in the system looking at colleges, so sometimes it's difficult to find those students, but as we get those students, we want to help them. And I agree, I think those students, they could excel here at Alfred. So it's definitely an area we're needing to continue to try and track down those types of students and non-traditional, so we can be able to recruit them to Alfred. But I agree, I think that's a population that we could really help, and they would benefit from an Alfred University education.
Well, it is 1:05, so we got a little bit more time. Is there any other questions in the room or on Zoom?
Hi, would you just explain what the difference between early action and early decision is?
Yes, yep. I'm so sorry I didn't mention that earlier. So early action and early decision, they're the most common things. You'll see rolling admissions as well. Early action is where a student is really telling a school, I am interested. I'm applying earlier than your regular decision deadline, because I want you to know I am interested. You're one of my top schools. And it's a way that students can tell us that, and we're able to really consider that. Early decision is when a student applies somewhere and says, I am really interested, and if I get in, I have to withdraw my application from all other schools and I've committed to your school. So early decision is a binding contract, whether early action is not binding. It's just a hand raiser really trying to engage with us and let us know they're interested in. So what we always tell students is, as you're looking and you hear early decision and you hear early action, you have to figure out what schools are what, because everyone's a little different. And you want to make sure if you apply early decision, it's at your top school. Because if it's not at your top school and you applied early decision, you have to withdraw your application from those other schools. And so that's that difference there. Rolling admissions is also used as a terminology, and that is where students are, finding out their admissions decisions throughout the year, and they can just apply anytime and find out their decision. And that school might not have a set deadline. So that's another terminology that students are hearing.
There is another question on Zoom now that I will read for the sake of the person who is unable to speak. Do we encourage students to attend classes when visiting campus? For instance, when a student is arranging a Friday visit, do we provide the student with a list of courses that are available on Fridays and ask the student which one they would like to attend? Presumably, you all can access our schedule and can see which courses are available when they are going to be on campus.
Yeah, so it's with that one, we don't let them know the exact courses that are offered that day, because when students are looking and they're interested, you have students from all different kind of part of their college search journey. You might have a freshman that's visiting campus. You might have a sophomore, a junior, and maybe those students aren't ready to sit in a class. And so giving them those options early, sometimes that's not what they're looking for, but we do ask them and we say, hey, are you interested in sitting in a class? And those students, we ask follow-up questions on what classes are you looking to sit in on? What do you want? Because we don't want to limit them by showing them, on Fridays, if they have a visit, there's these 4 classes, let's say, that they can sit in on, or these 5, because maybe there's another area they're also interested in. And we can actually say, hey, would next Tuesday work better? Because there's different courses that would fit your needs better. So we're able to kind of talk them through that a little bit more, but we encourage them to come sit in on classes. We really focus that on for our senior students though, because that's really at that point in time where they're getting the most out of that. Usually our freshmen through juniors that visit, they don't want to sit in on a class. They're more in that exploratory stage. So we find that seniors are the ones that are really focused. And that's why we've added more class sit-ins and those mock classes for our open house events that we're doing. So very thankful for our faculty that are helping out with that, because that helps on those weekends or holiday visits. But we also have that opportunity for students to, it's in the springtime, we call them shadow days. They shadow a student and they get to go to those classes, and they can choose a student based on their major. That's one of our admissions ambassadors to follow throughout the day. So there's some different opportunities for students to pick and choose from to sit in on classes. But we always want to make sure it's not during an inconvenient time for the faculty members too. And so that's why we kind of do the outreach rather than, a student say, hey, I'm going to go sit into these classes. We want to get permission before we have a student sign up for something like that.
And just for clarity, they are encouraged to do it at least when they're ready for it.
Yes, 100%. And if we're talking to a junior and they're like, I really want to sit in on a class, we're going to help make that happen. If that's what they're ready for. I was talking to a junior, that's a good example this summer, in April. And I was like, hey, let's, what are you interested in? And mom was really interested in a class sit-in, but the student's like, I don't want to do that yet. Can I wait? Let me wait. And so that's one example, but sometimes students, they just want to wait till their senior year until they've officially applied, until they've been accepted to do that.
If there are no other questions, please join me in thanking Kyla for a great talk.
Thank you. And thanks for all that you all do to help with recruitment already.